I'm going to get started and then we'll switch over to Jeremy. This on. It is, still have to look, June 11th, 2009. And we are here at the Grout Museum with Eugene Holmes. Thank you very much, Mr. Holmes, for sitting down and talking with us today. Let's start out by having us give us your name and spell it.
Eugene A. Holmes, Eugeneaholmes.
Mr. Holmes, when were you born and where?
I was born in Waterloo, Iowa, at the old St. Francis Hospital, January 15th, 1928.
Where did you go to school, Mr. Holmes?
Northeast Iowa.
During
the Depression, we moved a lot, so I went to school in Sumner, New Hampton, Independence, Cedar Falls, Waterloo. Graduated from West High Waterloo.
What year?
1946.
What did your father do?
My father was a machinist at John Deere.
Mother?
But a baker by trade.
And your mother?
A homemaker.
Brothers and sisters?
One brother, 18 months younger, 2 sisters.
All right, let's pick up. You were in high school at West High. You're going to graduate. How did you get involved with the military in the broadest sense?
We got involved during high school. The National Guard was federalized and Iowa was left without any kind of a force. So they instituted the Iowa State Guard, and that was for men that were, or boys that were too young to go and men that were too old to go. So in high school I joined the State Guard, and we had weekly drills which were held at the Armory, then above the Cyber Laundry off 5th Street.
And what motivated you to go into the Iowa State Guard?
Probably patriotism of the time, you know.
By the way, I have missed one question. Where were you when you heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor?
The attack on Pearl Harbor, we were living at 604 Randall Street in Waterloo, and listened to it on the radio that Sunday afternoon.
Tough day.
Very.
Jeremy, questions?
What year did you enlist in the State Guard?
I think 1944.
And how did you hear about the Guard?
You know, I had friends that were in. And I only know of 2 other that were State Guard members. So.
Okay.
Was it for the uniform?
Might have been. Who knows?
Did the uniform make a difference in your social life?
Not really.
And you said you were still in high school. About what age were you when you enlisted?
Probably 17.
And what was the enlistment process to get into the State Guard?
Well, you went down and they signed you up, and they very limited physical, and you were in.
So not quite as rigorous as the Army or any of the other?
No, no. There were no blood tests or anything like that. So.
And you said that it was mostly boys and older men who signed up for the State Guard. Were a lot of them, were they just your average run-of-the-mill citizens, or was there a wide variety of people who signed up?
I think there was a wide variety. Our commanding officer was Paul Hayes, and he was a realtor. Our one of our lieutenants was Tim Riley, who worked at John Deere. One of our other officers was Jay Levi, who was had the pawn shop. So,
Go ahead.
Now, from what we've read about it, a lot of the men who were in the State Guard eventually enlisted. Was there any exemption being a member of the State Guard from the draft at all?
not that I know of.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge, there was no exemption. And some of the older gentlemen could have been World War I vets, you know, or had military experience.
Okay.
We went on a weekly drill, which was held at the Armory. We went on a yearly encampment, which was held at Camp Dodge in Johnson, down by Des Moines. And the camp is still going.
Let me just pause there. Tell us what the weekly drills were like. What did you do? And then tell us what the 2-week preempted you. But yeah.
The weekly drill was we drilled on military maneuvers, military regiment. We drilled on riot control. It was a force that was to be used in case in point, when I wasn't there, but the strike at Wrath that got really nasty, the State Guard was called out, and they were utilized in a riot control environment, and did a very good job. So we trained on that, and that was part of our training. We at one time, to show what we could do, the Waterloo Police Force barricaded themselves in the old 40 and 8 clubhouse that's south. I don't know whether it's still there, whether it's south of town yet or not. They barricaded themselves in there, and we took them out.
But
one of our guys snuck up to the back door and put a tear gas grenade in a bucket in the back door. So.
And Emil Steffen never figured out who did it, right?
Right.
40 and 8 still out at Antique Acres, north of town.
Okay, is that where I was out there last year at the talking to? Yeah.
And who did this training? Was it regular Army personnel, or?
It was done by the officers who had training in that, and our lieutenants and captains. We had some sergeants that were very knowledgeable in that.
All right.
Jim Potter was one of our sergeants. He was later a welder at John Deere, and I worked with him daily.
Okay. And so you were part of Company M here in Waterloo?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was another company in Cedar Falls.
Mm-hmm. And what was your job?
I was just a rifleman.
Okay.
Yeah. And you learned to the march, how to march, your left from your right. You learned the manual of arms. And later in life, when I was in boot camp, I made squad leader right away because of past experience.
So yeah, a lot of men used it as sort of a stepping ground for going on to maybe enlistment.
I think the younger ones, yes. And it was a good training tool for the younger group of us that had planned to enlist. So we had a leg up on the rest of them.
And what kind of duties, getting into like after you'd been enlisted and trained, what kind of duties did you have, like on a weekly basis or so?
On a weekly basis, just to attend the drill, the weekly drill, and train, and we just kept our training up. They would one of the formations was like a flying wedge, where you would move a crowd back, and we'd practice that, you know, that have it just right, and that was one of the things that we did on a weekly basis. It was training.
Okay. And between your weekly meetings, it was just go on with life as it was?
Yep, you were a schoolboy.
All right.
Schoolboy with a uniform. I gotta think that had a difference there.
And was there any pay as being in the State Guard?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
No, it was a volunteer force.
All right. So, for raising money for the company, did you hold any fundraisers at all?
Not that I know of. I
Okay.
think we were funded by the state as far as equipment and that kind of thing.
All right. And the organization and equipment that you guys had were mostly just run-of-the-mill military equipment?
Sure, yes.
Outdated military equipment?
We did not have M1 rifles. We had like O3s or Enfields.
Yep. Yep. So clearly lethal, but
However, in the armory were Tommy guns.
So were a lot of these weapons donated or state supplied?
Well, no, they were state supplied, and I imagine from the state received them from the national military.
All right. And in your experiences, were you treated on sort of an equal basis by like Army personnel or people in the actual armed services?
No contact with them.
No contact?
No contact. Not that I know of.
so if you were in uniform, when you were in uniform at Camp Dodge, you still had to salute regular
Sure.
Army officers.
Sure, yes.
Gotcha.
All right.
They commanded the respect too, you know. But we had very little contact. We were in one part of the camp, and they were in another.
All right.
So
All right. And were there a lot of men from the Guard who eventually went on to enlist into the Army or Navy, Marine Corps?
I imagine they were. I only know of one case, and that's
Okay.
me. So I don't know whether there were others that joined after that or not. I don't know.
I think the differentiating, we've been looking at the Iowa Guardsman, that magazine that came out, and then also the newspapers. And so probably as I'm thinking about it, the ones that enlisted were the ones who did it during World War II, which were at least a few years older than Gene. So, but okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
And then also in the newspapers we come across that some of the men requested to be inactivated. Were these for like health reasons, or would you know anything about that?
Could be, or hardship of one kind or another,
Okay.
either health or work related, or they maybe were moving to a different city or another job or something.
Okay. And since it was volunteer, it was
Mhm.
just all right. Was there ever talk about the Guard being federalized?
None that I know of. None that I know of. And I think that they always planned on the National Guard coming back from federal service.
All right. And then, were you ever activated for duties like flood relief or the riots at Eldora?
No. I was gone by then. I was had enlisted in the Marine Corps, and so I was gone when those operations took place.
Okay.
The one at Eldora, they were over there, I know, and I know they were out at Rath.
Okay.
They were at Eldora for 3 months, according to Jeremy.
Yeah. Yeah. They were, you know.
So you were already enlisted in the Marine Corps by the time the National Guard started taking over as well?
Yes.
Returning?
Yes.
Okay.
By the time they were returning.
All right.
I enlisted in September of 1946.
Okay. And did you receive a lot of, or did you receive sort of like respect from the community as being a member of the Guard? Were you seen as a better citizen for it, or?
I don't remember that we were, and I think that most of the citizenry was unaware that we were state guards.
Mm-hmm.
The neighbors might have seen you going in uniform or something, but I think that mainly the mainstream public really didn't know about us until like Eldora or the Wrath Strike. Then they knew more about us, you know.
Okay.
We would see occasional references to the state guard in the newspapers being called up, and as Jeremy suggested, there were in some parts of the state there were dances for fundraisers that were sponsored by the state guard, and so we were sort of curious as to.
I don't know of any that were held here.
Okay.
This is not an entertaining town. They would never have dances or beer parties. Go ahead.
All right. Well, yeah, that's
We
pretty
had-
much all I have.
We had three. You know the Brewster boys.
Sure.
Their dad was the cook. He ran restaurants around, I think, in town, or was a cook at restaurants, and so he was the one of the cooks, as was a gentleman by the name of Fouch. He was also a cook, but the two Brewster boys don't live too far from me, so
And
I
they-
see them every now and then.
They kind of got us going on this. Marv had some records that he wanted
Yeah.
kind of preserved, so he has given them over, and that was good, and that kind of put us on to you. And he said there may be one or two other people around. He called, I think, Mr. Rowley, or Roll, R-O-L-L-E.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rowley.
Rowley, but he didn't know of many other folks who
No,
were. Yeah,
no.
Yeah.
See, the ones that were too old to go are now gone.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
they were in their 40s or 50s at that time. Well, that's a long time ago.
State Guard, got it. When did you make the decision to join the Marine Corps?
That was kind of in the back of the mind all the time, and when I finally graduated in August, then the process speeded up, and I enlisted then the 28th of September, 1946.
And where were you inducted?
At Great Lakes.
What was it like? We always like to ask people, what was it like that first week going from, although you had some military experience.
Sure.
Yeah, but the Marine Corps is the Marine Corps is the Marine Corps.
The first week was spent on the train between Chicago and San Diego. Because I was enlisted west of the Mississippi, I went to San Diego for boot camp. Those east of the Mississippi went to Parris Island. So we spent almost a week on the train between Chicago on a sleeper and down through Arizona, the south. The air conditioner didn't work, and the windows were open, and the steam engine put soot in the cars, and so it was lots of fun.
Yep. But they were just getting you ready for life with the Marine Corps.
That's right.
How was boot camp?
Boot camp was very strict. No chewing gum. No canteen services or anything. We had 3 drill instructors, a senior, and then 2 junior instructors. We usually had a gunnery sergeant, which is 5 stripes, a buck sergeant, 3 stripes, and a corporal.
Just in case somebody got out of line.
Oh boy. They tried to get, I didn't swim. So my first swimming test was one guy picking on me in the front, a guy around behind me, and they dumped me in the pool. Well, then they pulled me out, and then I got into swimming lessons. And I was doing pretty good, except I got pneumonia on them. It was swim lessons, outdoor pool in California in the wintertime. Well, you think California is warm weather, but not too far up the road, the water would freeze. It was dripping out of the faucets, and then so I got pneumonia on them. Spent 23 days in Naval Air North, or in 11th Naval District Hospital. Came back to a different training company, platoon. Our drill instructors was a gunnery sergeant Moronk, who was a prize fighter, big barrel-chested fellow. Our sergeant, buck sergeant, was a judo expert. The corporal I had to look up to. He was a big fella. That was our drill instructors. So you pretty well towed the mark.
Intimidation.
Well, yes.
But you'd already been through it, at least part,
Sure.
right? Yeah.
Sure. And even in that second go-around, when I came back to the second training company, or training platoon, I was made drill instructor because I had previous experience. Whether they knew that or not, I don't know, or whether it was just the way you handled yourself.
From training, where did you go? What was your specialty?
From training, I was put in the mess duty, 30 days mess duty at Naval Air North Island, or at ahead of myself there, at the recruit depot. So you 30 days on mess duty.
Describe mess duty.
Mess duty, boy, it was terrible peeling potatoes. You had a round kettle-like thing that spun, and it was very abrasive on the inside. You dumped the potatoes in there and hit the button, and that peeled them.
None of this.
No knife, no digging out the eyes. You had all you wanted to eat. It was mess duty was very good duty. I went in to the Marine Corps at 169 pounds, 6'2". And between 28th of September and 8th of January, I gained 50 pounds. Good living and good food, I guess. But then I was, after mess duty, I was shipped overseas across the bay in San Diego to Naval Air North Island. That's overseas. I spent 2 years in a guard company on Naval Air North Island, Naval Air North Island is a huge, big naval air station on Coronado Island. That was before the bridge. We rode what we called the nickel snatcher. For a nickel, we could ride back and forth between Coronado and San Diego for liberty. The ferry boats ran all the time. Naval Air North Island was where the carriers came in, the aircraft carriers came in and offloaded planes to be repaired and onloaded planes that were repaired.
Busy port.
Very busy. At that time, the big Martin Mars seaplanes took off on sea patrol all the time out of Naval Air North Island. It was a huge, big repair station. We had to get down daily and put up the flag and take the flag down at night. Pulled guard duty down on the wharf and also main gate, plus we had a brig. So we pulled brig duty also.
Describe that?
the brig is a lockup for unruly sailors or Marines.
Can't imagine any.
We didn't have any Marines in there, but but sailors. And normally we didn't have any trouble. We took the prisoners out on work details, mowing grass, picking up trash, whatever on the Naval Air Station. If you had one prisoner, you carried a .45 automatic. If you had two or more, you carried a sawed-off shotgun.
46, 47 were quiet times in between the wars, so to speak.
Yes.
Any sense of what you envisioned the future would be like? I mean, were people talking about the world politics?
Not that I remember that much. No. We just did our daily duties. We were on a day, off a day. You might be in the brig guard. We had an inner guard, outer guard. Outer guard walked around the outside all the time. We had the main gate to maintain.
Tell us a little bit about the main gate, because a lot of people went through the main gate, including a lot of dignitaries.
One of long story, but our base commander was Captain Leslie Garys, and the last World War II magazine had an article, a long article in it about Captain Leslie Garys bringing the USS Franklin aircraft carrier back to port after it was written off. He was our captain. If you were on the main gate checking traffic, checking Liberty passes to make sure they were not overdue or anything, or see if they really rated to be on base, if you had a car pulled over that was maybe waiting for someone and the captain came through with his driver and he'd see that car over there, before his driver would get completely stopped, that captain would have the rear door open and want to know if you were having trouble. And that was the kind of a captain he was.
Yeah. Nice to have, even in 46, 47, nice to have support.
That's right.
There's always a mystique about the Marine Corps, but you were on a naval base. How did you and the Navy folks get along?
Well, we in the guard position, they more or less had to get along with us. They had to, you know, if they come in unruly or whatever, why we could call the MPs on them, and they had to toe the mark.
It wasn't worth it, was it?
No,
for them?
no.
When did you get out of the Marine Corps? The first time?
The first time I was discharged in September of 1948 at Chicago Naval, the Great Lakes Naval Training Center.
Stay in the Marine, in the reserves?
I enlisted in the reserves. It was advertised or put to you that you could retain your rank if you were ever called back. So I was a corporal. So I thought, well, that's probably worth it. They probably never get called back. So I enlisted in the reserves, what was called the 3B Reserve.
3B. That means?
That you didn't attend encampments or meetings, but you were still in the reserve.
So no obligations except that you were on call.
That's right.
Okay. Any compensation, any pay for that?
None.
None. Did you check in once a year, once a month?
No.
Well, they just sort of knew you were there.
Yep. You were on the books.
On the books. Yeah. Interesting. 46, 48 rather, what did you do when you came back?
48, I laid around for maybe 2 weeks, and then I went to John Deere and got a job. I started in 7E grinding room, tool sharpening. I heard about the apprentice school and tried to gain entrance to that apprentice school, and I'd get down once a week and then once every 2 weeks and so on. In 1950, when the strike was on, then the Korean thing was on. So it was, and whenever I would pick my wife up from her work, I'd say, well, I got the letter today, I'm going. And she'd say, yeah, sure. Well, one day I had it. One day that letter came.
Back up a minute. The North Koreans invade South Korea in June 25 of 1950. When you learned about that from the papers, did you have a sense of what that meant for you?
You know, I think at the time, yes, that it was in the back of your mind that, yeah, maybe you could get called up. I had a good friend that was in the 11th Marines, which is the artillery section that lived in Grundy Center. And he and I talked about it several times, but I'm sure it was in the back of your mind. And as it got closer, you know, and they started calling up reserves.
July, August, September, the reserves just got swept.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Tell us the story of you getting called back after you got the letter.
After we got the letter, I picked on the wife, told her, yeah, oh, I got the letter today, and then it was sticking up in the visor of the car, so she said, oh boy. Well, then we had a week or two before we were to report, and Bob Munt, we're friends, my wife and his wife were friends and worked together. I had a 47 Chevy, two-door, and we took that car to Des Moines to take our physical. And we thought we'd take our physical in the morning, we'd come back in the afternoon and be home for 30 days or 60, and then maybe be called, maybe not. Well, if we'd have read our orders said you will in train to California that afternoon. So at we took our physicals and were done by 11, and at 1 o'clock we boarded a train for Camp Pendleton, California. The girls went home alone. My wife and I had been married 4 months. The girls were not happy.
Yes, I can imagine. Did they ever join you out in California for training?
Yes.
Okay.
Before Thanksgiving, my wife came out. My dad was working at John Deere, and he was on strike too. So my parents came out with my wife in our car, and my parents stayed around for a week, and the wife and I found a little one-room, share the kitchen apartment with a bunch of other Marines, and she was out there then until I left, and her mother flew out then and rode back with her.
When you went out to San Diego, pick up the training very quickly. What did you do, and where was your second boot camp?
We were in Tent Camp 2 in Camp Pendleton, and it was advanced combat training. Military maneuvers. I could run up against a 6-foot wall and put a foot in the middle of it and go over the top, just right over, no problem. Today that'd be different. But anyway, we had demolition training, grenade throwing. The demolition training will later, I think, save my life. We had the grenade throwing. We had rifle grenades where you'd launch from a rifle. And it was, we had, the demolition training was with TNT and C4, which is a plastic explosive. We worked with shaped charges. a shape charge, a 40-pound shape charge, so big around, about so tall, pointed at the top and like a funnel in the bottom. When it's set off, that funnel inverts and it has a single point of pressure. In the hard California soil, we could dig a 6-foot post hole, just kaboom. TNT training comes in a 2-pound block of TNT, about 1.5 inches, 2 inches square. The instructor, funny sidelight maybe, but the instructor fused one, or supposedly, and taped it all like he's supposed to with a big long fuse and an igniter on the end of it. And he pulls it, and the fuse is burning out here, and he hands it to the guy in the front row, and he says, "Here, check, make sure this is done right." The guy looks it over, hands it to the guy behind him. He checks it over. That guy hands it to the guy behind him. The fuse is burning down, you know. The third guy stands up and throws it just as hard as he can throw it. Get it out of there. The instructor had not put a cap in it, so it would not go off. They didn't know that, though.
How long can you stand there without?
Right. Yeah. How nervous can you be?
How nervous can you be? How long were you in Camp Pendleton for training?
Camp Pendleton, we were there. I left at the end of October, and we had 1 week's leave over Christmas.